And I'm delighted to have with me two true free thinkers, Howard Cox, who was the Reform UK candidate for the London mayoralty against Sadiq Khan and the leader of the very successful Fair Fuel campaign, and the Conservative commentator Charlie Sansom, host of X Uncensored on Elon Musk's aforementioned social media platform on Sunday nights from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. So, wow. Howard Cox, I want to start with Jess Phillips, actually, because I find it totally astonishing that the MSM has given a pass to a Home Office minister who seemingly, I guess, endorsed that threat to Sky News by masked Muslim yobs. What did you make of it?
Well, hi, Dan. And the thing that got me about this is our Home Office minister. You know, this is a person that is supposed to have respect as a top politician, who's supposed to have a brain and actually recognise that they need to actually bring sensitivity to the whole situation. But instead, she's created more division. And it's been driven by her boss, of course, in Keir Starmer. And to blame Richard Tice as well in a tweet as well, I could not believe it. And Richard Tice has got not one bit of racism in him. This is the point. It's the same with Nigel Farage. And this is our problem, isn't it? We've got a situation where we've got a Labour government with 400 MPs, a huge majority that we've got to put up with. And what we're going to be seeing is pressure, so much pressure on the notionally the right wing, which I hate that particular title, to actually, toe the line and keep quiet. And they're going to try to put us into a little compartment so that the socialists, the left wing, can rule like a dictatorship. So in answer to your question, this is absolutely horrendous. And I honestly feel sick to the pit of my stomach.
Well, I do too. Because Charlie Sansom, when it comes to Jess Phillips, we know what this is about. We know this is because she has a very strong sectarian representation in her seat. In fact, they nearly booted her out altogether. But that doesn't make it right, Charlie. And where's the media on this? Can you imagine if any politician of the right had endorsed any violent thug over the past few days? They would be hounded from their job.
Right-wing politicians are being hounded as we speak because you've got accusations against Nigel Farage saying that he's incited these issues when he hasn't said a word. You've got the same thing being said about Tommy Robinson when he's on video calling for calm and not inciting this at all, and a few other characters that are considered right-wing. So I think you're right. It would have been a lot worse for them if they had endorsed this. But one thing I would say about the reporting of this is that Sky News have since deleted the videos that you've shown already in your opening monologue. And I have to ask the question, why? Why would they delete videos showing Muslim men running around a roundabout in their cars the way they were and stabbing tyres and carrying weapons? Why would they delete those videos? It's very sinister in my view.
It is incredibly sinister.
And probably under pressure from the government. It wouldn't surprise me if they had someone actually speak to them in their shell-like ears and saying, look, I don't think that's a good thing. You're encouraging issues of actually, the fact is, let's face it, we are being ruled by immigrants at the moment in time, what is happening at the moment in time, and that's what we need to do. And I agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example, that immigration must be halted completely. We must stop. And that if we can do that right away now, we might actually get on top of what the problem we're seeing right across in all our major cities.
Can we actually just talk about what Jess Phillips actually claimed, Charlie? Because is there any evidence whatsoever that the reason that there was all of this Muslim violence on the streets of Birmingham last night was because of a threatened far-right protest? Because she's expecting us to take her word for it. The Muslim man outside the Islamic Centre is expecting us to believe that he was tipped off by the police. But there was no protest. There were no far-right demonstrators. So is this just an easy way to excuse appalling behaviour?
Yeah, it's definitely an easy cop-out for her. And one thing I responded to her on X, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, is I said, so what you're saying is that these people have turned up for a fight. And the amount of people that agreed with me for saying that was unbelievable, because obviously they've turned up there for a row. Now, I can understand...
as if that's acceptable, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, of course. And I can understand why people feel angry. You've got you've got white British people that feel marginalised by the state and the police, and then you've got Muslims who feel like the white people are just coming to attack their mosques. I can understand why there are tensions on both sides, not making excuses for it, but I think that people need to calm down a little bit and focus on what really matters here, which is where this all started. And it's the three girls, and that goes back to immigration.
Totally. And the thing is, Howard, is I have been completely consistent on this, and I always am. I deplore all violence, okay? Especially actually against the police. And that's not to say that I always agree with how the police run things, especially with Mark Rowley and the Met, but I fully support the individual officers. And you saw that with me when it came to the Manchester airport situation, which we'll be speaking about shortly. So I just need to clarify that. I don't think it needs to be clarified, but I have never, ever endorsed any form of violence. I do not believe in it. I think it is completely wrong. But equally wrong, Howard, is to gaslight an entire nation into thinking that the violence is only coming from one group of people when it's provably not.
Well, that's the point, Dan. What we're seeing at the moment is that, I've been involved with various anti-ULEZ protests across London. 25 of them I went to, and we had about 4 policemen policing us. But when we actually had a situation whereby we decided to actually have a little protest of anti-ULEZ marches or rallies in the Tooting area, which happens to be where Sadiq Khan lives, they had 200 police there. We were not a threat. Most of the people, I'm 70, most of the people average my age, and we were just standing there saying, we don't want ULEZ. It's as simple as that. But 5 of them were arrested. They're called the Tooting Five, you probably heard. And they're actually, they haven't been convicted yet, but they've been arrested, and they're up in front of the court, I think in about next month or so, and I'm going to be a mitigating witness. But this is this policing. What is happening? You see Martin Daubney, just walking down checking on something. For
GB News presenter.
Yeah, and he's in handcuffs for a period of time, that sort of thing. I also walked across Parliament Square when they projected that, from the river to the sea onto Big Ben. Those sorts of things. And I went up to a policeman and said, excuse me, you realise that's against the law, not allowed to do that sort of thing. And there's a lot of people around here with hoods on. And we saw that last night. And I said, what are you going to do about it? He said, we've been told to do nothing about it. So there is definitely biased policing here, whereas the whole process is, we're seeing at the moment, the day after this, I think it was about middle of last week, wasn't it, or something, where there was a lot of people, the police actually laid into, started punching people in the head, white people in the head, etc. But the next day, when there was a protest by a lot of Muslims and Indians and Pakistanis, there was not a policeman to be seen. So what is going on? If that's not two-tier policing, what is Keir Starmer seeing?
First, though, what's so important about being independent is that I'm only ever going to tell you about products that I use, truly believe in, and think will improve your life. So that's why today I want to let you know about Verso. Now, I've entered my 40s, really trying to stay healthy. Haven't been very good over the past week, but let me tell you, I'm back on it today. Exercising, doing the 16-8 fast. But what's interesting, that will only get you so far. Scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I wanted a product that would enhance everything that I was doing, but that was also backed up by solid evidence. So that's why I use Celbean by Verso every morning. It has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. That's the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now, right at the start of my day. It has genuinely been transformative. Fasting's easier. I've lost fat. And Verso tell me that's actually due to its blood sugar regulation effects, which lead to fewer cravings. I'm sleeping better too. This product has taken years off me. I'd love you to experience the same thing. A couple of important notes. Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you're getting what you paid for. And you don't have to pay that much today, actually, because if you head right now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. All you need to do is use the coupon code outspoken. I'll put the link in our YouTube and Rumble descriptions. But to repeat, that's bui.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken. Totally. So we have two-tier policing, we have two-tier politicians, and we have a two-tier media. But Charlie, you are right to bring up the root cause of all of this, because I am utterly infuriated when I see this constant refrain that this has all been caused by a couple of erroneous tweets which wrongly suggested that the accused and the 17-year-old who has been charged for the Southport massacre was was someone who'd come over on the boats, was an illegal immigrant. Now, by the time there was any form of violence on the streets whatsoever, Charlie, we all knew he was a 17-year-old whose parents had immigrated to the UK from Rwanda. We knew that. So it is so intellectually dishonest to claim that this anger is a result of disinformation. No, this anger is a result of the mass immigration, both legal and illegal, which is completely destroying this country. We know it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that where we've become an extremely tolerant nation, there are limits to that tolerance. And now we're seeing it. Now, when you look at the history of immigration and some of the atrocious crimes that have been committed by people that have come to this country, you go back to the London tube bombings, the bus that got blown up in 2005. You've got the Ariana Grande concert that was there was a bomb let off there. You've got people being stabbed, soldiers being stabbed and murdered on the streets. London Bridge. It's incredible how much this country has accepted in the name of being tolerant and saying, please come, we accept you, we'd like to embrace you into our culture. But these people come here, do they embrace our culture? You don't see these kinds of things happening on this level from other groups in this nation. And I find that really concerning that Labour MPs, and I'm not blaming the Labour Party for this entirely, the Conservative Party are more to blame than the Labour Party are for this.
Which is why they're being very quiet, actually, at the moment. So, Charlie, do you agree with Howard Cox that we've got to just say no immigration whatsoever?
I agree with Howard on a lot of things, actually. I mean, me and Howard get along very well. But yeah, I agree. Immigration needs to stop. We need to just halt it and have a look at ourselves and say, what is actually happening in this country? Do these people belong here? Are you illegal? If you are, goodbye. Do you have a criminal record? Very sorry, goodbye. We need to just get rid and clean house. We don't need problems. We're going to have our own problems that come from British-born citizens. We don't need to import other problems.
I know, and the problem is, Howard, there's appeasement going on. Yeah. And the appeasement, by the way, is of extreme Islam. No one has problems with law-abiding Muslim citizens. Of course we don't. But Howard, we know what's happening. I mean, you ran for the London mayoralty versus Sadiq Khan. You know, Howard, that there are parts of London that are virtually no-go areas where Sharia law has been introduced through the back door. That is happening now.
You're absolutely right. And my advisors during my campaigning in London told me to avoid certain areas. Dan, you got it spot on. I was told, don't go there, Howard, you risk your life. They were saying things like that sort of thing. I already get a lot of threats from cyclists because of my motoring campaign. But but the same thing. But thank heavens, just going on to a serious point here, is thank heavens for Elon Musk. Because you made the point so rightly, Dan, about if we didn't have him doing what he's doing now, I mean, he won't shut himself down on his own platform. And thank God he's putting out the truth.
Yeah. So where does this go, Charlie, though, with Elon Musk? Because it has now become an almost focal point of this debate. Musk versus Starmer. Who wins? Does Starmer back down? Does he just try and bully the other social media companies? Or do you think there's a realistic possibility, like I do, that we could actually see Starmer attempt to ban X in this country?
I mean, he could try, but the internet has already been democratized. Information will of what the UK government does, what Keir Starmer decides to censor or otherwise, because we've got friends in America that follow the news over here. We've got friends around the world in Australia and other Anglo nations that are really keen to get to the bottom of what's going on in our country. So news will disseminate regardless. I do think, though, that there will be curtailment on free speech. I predicted this before Labour won the general election.
Yep.
I think it's inevitable that's what they'll do, because that's what they're like. Never forget this is the party that wanted to lock down harder and faster. They're not tolerant of other opinions, unless it's woke, unless it's pro-immigrant, unless it's pro, whatever crazy policy they invent tomorrow or the next day, they're against it. So we need to really be wary of what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, they're authoritarian.
They've already shut the free speech bill, haven't they? They just switched that off.
Yeah, so within a month, Howard, there's no free speech in universities, and their language is all about shutting down free speech online.
Yeah, absolutely. Just talk to Toby Young about that one.
Yeah, indeed. Look, I want to talk a bit about the dishonest mainstream media coverage, though, as well, because I call that out because very few people do. So if we look at this BBC report, this was from Phil Mackey, reporting from Birmingham last night. And I actually read through the entire report, and not once did he at any point suggest that any of the disturbances in Birmingham could have been caused by the Muslim population, which seems massively intellectually dishonest, Charlie.
Narrative they want to establish, isn't it, that the far right are bad? I've been looking at this for a while, the accusations from the media about the far right this and far right that, since April on St George's Day, when I went to London and I was caught up in it. I think I actually saw Howard walking down Whitehall that day, and we had a quick chat. And I saw how the police treated normal English patriots walking down the street celebrating their day unnecessary. Then you fast forward to June the 1st, where there was a Tommy Robinson rally. There wasn't any trouble there, but the papers still called it far right. And now you've got this being called far right. Now, I have to concede there will be people in these crowds and riots that are racist. Of course there will be. But you need to accept that there are problems that have stemmed well prior to these recent events that have caused this. Unless the government,
and it's about the majority, isn't it? Wow. If you frame everyone protesting, everyone who has concerns as far right, that's when you lose the population. There has been such irresponsible rhetoric, though, coming from the left. So Maya Tusi made clear about the coverage on GB News from the liberal media commentator Matthew Stadlen. Now, I'm not actually going to play this for you because I think Matthew Stadlen is such a pox on society. I actually do not want to give him the airtime, but I will share this tweet from Maya Tusi, who said, liberal media commentator Matthew Stadlen said on GB News that migrants are being massacred by white people in the north of England. He used the word pogrom. This language will trigger radical Islamists to come out on the streets again to attack white people. I mean, that's an astonishing thing for him to say, Howard. In fairness, the presenters on GB News, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, both did push back. But how is he allowed to get away with saying that? Why do the Ofcomunists not go after someone like that for making a completely untrue, irresponsible comment designed to spark Islamist violence against white people?
Well, Ofcom's not fit for purpose, and I don't need to tell you that, Dan.
No.
But there's also, I watched today Alex Phillips on Talk TV, or Talk Radio, whatever it's called these days. She was actually up against, I think, or interviewing James Matheson, and he called, I couldn't believe this, what I was hearing, Alex a racist.
Yeah. Said, do you know what? Do you know what, Howard? I've actually got that clip. This was one of the positive moments of the day, one of the only positive things I've seen from the MSM. I played Matthew Saeed on Times Radio yesterday. I want to give credit for Alex Phillips, who is doing God's work over on Talk TV. So let's have a look and you can react off the back.
Follow him online. He's the most searched man on the internet.
I worry
These
that
young
people
men
like you. I worry that people like you have swallowed your own narrative to the extent that for some reason you cannot see the wood from the trees. You have spent so long gaslighting us that problems we see happening in our society don't exist and that they are our fault, and you're doing it again. You are repeating that language and that narrative. When are you going to go into listening mode and understand? Actually, the discontent comes from something. It comes from, be it material need, it comes from a lack of integration and social concerns. When are you going to understand that? And instead of just
it sounds to me like you're making... It sounds to me like you're making apologies for racism and fascism.
Of course I'm not. You idiot. Listen, I've told you there is vile things happening that differ.
Why are you bothered about...
Get him off. I don't want to listen. I do not want to speak to a man, frankly, who seems to have a pathological problem with the truth. Idiot. This is why we're not solving the problem, Tim, because you can't talk to them. You cannot explain to them that there are people in this country who are really upset with the way society is without him turning around and saying that somehow I am condoning or inciting the violence happening, which I'm absolutely not doing.
Go, Alex. What a moment, Howard, because she's so right. And that's why people are so terrified.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, I texted her immediately. I saw that afterwards, and she came back to me and said, "Thank you, Howard. Let's have a cider soon." She knows she loves her cider, West Country. But the thing is about what Alex said is so true. You cannot have a discussion or a debate with a left-wing person. I mean, I'm a Thatcherite. You know, I mean, I voted Tory for 50 years of my life, and the reason why I left them is simply because they've moved away from my slightly right of centre. I'm not right wing, wherever it is. I'm not a fascist. I'm not a racist. I just care passionately about if you can look after yourself, you should look after yourself. If you can't look after yourself, the state should help you. It's
well,
as simple as that.
Of course, because Charlie, people who had centrist views, like me, or views that were considered centrist 5-10 years ago, we're now being branded far right. So is it just time to embrace that label?
Well, I would wear it as a badge of honor these days. It's the new racist, it's the new homophobic, it's the new whatever they want to add to the end of a word now that they deem offensive. I mean, I don't think it carries much weight. I think the media like to think it does because they believe that people are going to read the papers and click on the videos online and watch the news at 10. I don't think they will. I think people are so engaged in this story and everything that's going on, especially online, that what the BBC say, what Sly News say, it's irrelevant because people can see it. When Keir Starmer says we don't have two-tier policing, everybody took the mickey out of him. I was going to swear then, I apologise. You know, people actually, you know, were taking shots at him saying, you know, what is this guy on? What is he not that we are? No one cares.
Of course, which is why it's great, I guess, that we can see it ourselves. But it's very frustrating given the mainstream media. Look, they're dying. They are absolutely dying. This will actually speed up their death, and I think that's a good thing. But of course, they still hold a lot of power over the establishment and the political establishment. I want to show you Robert Jenrick, who is now the favourite, actually, to become the next Conservative Party leader. The Tories have been soft on all of this, which is not surprising, given that I think they just want to keep out of it, really, given they're the ones that opened up the borders and caused all of these issues and failed to stop the boats. But I actually think out of all of them, Robert Jenrick got the tone right today. Watch this.
Last few days, our country has witnessed terrible events, actions that have no place in our decent society. 3 innocent little girls were killed. And whatever may have happened since, we must never forget these victims, as well as the injured children, the bereaved families, the courageous first responders, and the traumatised community of Southport. The whole of Britain united in mourning. And it was understandable that amidst the sadness was a real sense of anger. But we need to be clear, 2 wrongs never make a right. We saw what happened next. Vigils turned into protests. Protests turned into disorder. And disorder turned into riots. The far right, who attacked a mosque, are a disgrace. The thugs attacking police officers are a disgrace. The arsonists, who set fire to a hotel with people inside, are a disgrace. The racists attacking Black or Asian Britons are a disgrace. And the sectarian gangs marching through towns and cities waving weapons and in some cases attacking white Britons are a disgrace. None of this is who we are. We must show no squeamishness or selectivity. All this violence must be called out.
Better than I've seen from any other Conservative. What do you think, Charlie?
I quite like that, actually. It hit the right markers. The tone was correct. He didn't single out the far right or what the media really mean is white people, which is fantastic. It was measured, and I think everything he said there was very fair.
And the good thing is, Howard, he also spoke specifically about the sectarian violence against white people. So he used the word sectarian rather than Muslim. Maybe that's considered safer. But I thought it was important that he said that.
It was well written and well presented. It's good to see that. It wasn't emotional, hysterical. It was just telling the truth. And good for Robert. I mean, I've worked with him closely on, again, going back to what I do, on a thing called Pump Watch. And he was one of the people. He was Exchequer Secretary at the time in the Treasury. And he asked me to produce a report on actually how to stop profiteering in the fuel supply chain. And in my experience working with him, he was always like that. Very measured, very calm, cool, selected, and didn't rush into hyperbole.
Yeah, which is what we need. Let me bring in the wonderful Angela Levin now to join the Superstar panel before we move on to our royal conversation later in the show. Angela, what do you make of everything you're seeing with this mainstream media coverage seemingly wanting to ignore the truth of what's going on? As a journalist, how do you feel about it?
As a journalist, a female journalist, I find it absolutely appalling because we can all see through it immediately. I mean, how many times the Prime Minister says it's not a double level. Of course it is. And I think that's goes against us because we know that that's absolute wrong and taking us for fools. And I don't like that at all. And I think that the whole thing about pretending everything's nice and being very kind and understanding isn't working either. I mean, you've got to have power. You've got to say, this is our country. Everyone is welcome if they fit in with our country. We can't change everything, change the law that it becomes Muslim law, change things that other people want that this country doesn't want. And I think that that's very important, let alone it's very, very difficult now to go out into the street. I feel very scared and I won't use a tube, I won't take a bus, as you know, because I don't want to put myself in a difficult position because the police just stand there and watch. I think it's absolutely astonishing. In the meeting today, the urgent meeting which the Prime Minister had, they discussed whether they should have the army in or not. And apparently the police said, we don't need anybody, we don't want the army. But they're not doing anything, they're just standing around. You've got to have active people who are going to make it safe. I think it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and what's so interesting, there you are, a white English Jewish woman saying that you are scared to go out on the streets, but all I've seen in the mainstream media coverage, and I've been watching, so you don't have to, I've been watching Woke ITV, I've been watching the British Bashing Corporation, I've been watching Sly News, and all you see is either black or Asian or Muslim people talking about how scared they are to go out on the streets. They never show a Jewish person, and we know why it's been so scary for Jewish folk, especially in London over the past few months. But look, I wanted to show you another extraordinary moment today, which I think is all connected to this really. Do you remember what happened at Manchester Airport a couple of weeks ago, where the two brothers, Mohammed Fahir Amaz and Mohammed Ahmad, and their mother, Shamim Akhtar, were believed to be victims of police brutality based on a video that was released showing some very heavy-handed policing, I think it's fair to say. But then, of course, we got the other side of the story, which I always said we would, and it showed actually that there were certainly two sides to this story. They had that total grifter lawyer, Ahmed Yaqub, for some time, ended up sacking him, now have got a much more experienced lawyer. There he is today, Ammar Anwar, who held the most extraordinary press conference claiming that the family, who clearly were violent towards these police officers, were actually victims of horrific racist and Islamophobic abuse, even though the person that initially caused the row with the family was Arabic. Honestly, it shows you, I think, the decline of this country, that the mainstream media are taking these guys seriously. But have a look at some of the press conference from Sky News.
Good morning. My name is Amar Anwar. I'm instructed as the lawyer with a team of lawyers to make this statement on behalf of the family of Fahir Amaz, who is sat on my left, Mohammed Ahmad, who is sat on my right, and their mother Shamim Akhtar, who is on my immediate right, and their family in respect of the incident at Manchester Airport on Tuesday, the 23rd of July 2024. This incident has given rise to active criminal and disciplinary investigations by Greater Manchester Police and the IOPC. The overlap between these proceedings increases any risk of prejudice if information or material is inappropriately disclosed in the investigations or to the public. The family have been placed in a difficult position as they had hoped that the IOPC would be allowed to do its job without interference. Sadly, it has been clear over the last 2 weeks that there has been a deliberate attempt to smear the family and portray incomplete version of events and thus potentially prejudice proceedings.
Ha! Honestly, Charlie, where does that guy get off? They were the ones that actually put out a tiny portion of the footage to try and finger the police rather than the family members. And if you don't want to be subjected to that sort of scrutiny, how about you don't beat up armed cops at the airport? That would be a good idea, right?
Yeah, it'd be a great idea. I think that people get lost in this story because they see two brown guys initially getting manhandled by the police. I'm very glad that the longer footage came out, and it was one of the things I was frustrated about at the time, was that nobody in the mainstream, all the left-wing commentators online were saying, see, this is police brutality, it's racism, it's systemic. And I thought to myself, what happened before this moment? We know the police can be heavy-handed, but I would imagine that in an airport, they'd have good reason to be. And when the footage came out and I watched these two guys go for the police the way they did, in any other country in the world, they would have been shot dead.
Yes, and Howard, what makes me so sick about this today, this press conference today, it's like, do you not realise there's already a race war on our streets? And you're trying to create some sort of George Floyd situation here, when actually we know that there were two sides to the story. There was no need for a press conference. Let the law play out. But personally, and I am prepared to say this on the record, I want the police officer reinstated to his job. I don't think, when you look at what happened beforehand and when you think about the fact that it was at an airport and he was armed and they could have been terrorists, I don't think he did anything wrong.
Well, I sort of agree with you now. When it first happened, we were all shocked when we seeing the guy lying on the floor having his head kicked in. That you cannot condone that. And Richard Tice and Lee Anderson were the only people that came out and tweeted or X'd, whatever you want to call it, to say that let's wait until we see the rest of the evidence. And I was 50-50 with them going so hard in actually saying, basically, not condoning the kicking in the head, but they were, or even supporting it, but they were quite calm about it. And they were right. And you're right about it, Dan, as well, because what we've seen, and what worries me even more is seeing that lawyer there. I would like to know who's paying for him and his team of lawyers now. Is it legal aid again?
Probably. Goodness knows. It feels like there are a group of, I would describe them as grifter race lawyers who are looking to spark race riots in this country. They should not be given the time of day. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.